Natural selection is a process of design, even if it doesn't design consciously. I think that last sentence, actually, the interviewer fed back to him. So you're saying natural selection is a process of design, even if it doesn't design consciously? And he says, yes, that's exactly right. So that's what Darwinism is about. And if you read around what happened in the middle of the 19th century, you will see that it is exactly what it was about. Regardless of what people may say today, I honestly feel they should check up a bit more closely on their history. It's very easy to do these days because it's all on the web. Darwinism was about replacing the designer. It was about eliminating the designer. So my question is, should it have done that? I mean, it effectively did replace the designer, didn't it? By our day, we can see that the designer has been banned. He's been totally banned. He's not allowed in school classrooms, he's not allowed in university departments, and Darwinism has replaced him. But is that a good thing? And should it have happened? I want to introduce you, if you don't know him already, to Professor Steve Fuller, Professor of Sociology at Warwick University. I'm actually a research student at Warwick University, but I've never met Steve Fuller. Wish I had. He is not a Christian. He calls himself a secular humanist. He has written extensively on the history of evolution and the whole history of the development of science. I'm going to be quoting from him extensively because you might be quite surprised at what he comes up with. Now remember, he is not a Christian, he is not a creationist. He has arrived at this from his study of the history of science. And he says the track record of neo-Darwinism is parasitic on prior creationist breakthroughs, over which neo-Darwinists now claim sole ownership, and which creationists have yet to claim back as their own. Now that's in his book. He's written a lot, but he's written two important books. One came out this year, one last. This is from his book, Descent Over Dissent, Intelligent Design's Challenge to Darwinism. So what he is saying is there have been creationist breakthroughs in the history of science, and neo-Darwinism is parasitic on those, and it's not acknowledging the history that led up to it, and creationists have got to claim this history back as theirs. The history of much of science, and particularly this area of biology, belongs to creationists. Well, to biology in general, belongs to creationists. That's what Steve Fuller is saying. And he's urging people who believe this to properly claim it back. So actually, that's what I'm going to try and do tonight. I'm going to try and claim back genetics because I'm going to now try and show that modern genetics owes everything to creationism and virtually nothing to Darwinism. In fact, it may actually be nothing. That's maybe something we can debate at the end. I'm not sure that genetics owes anything at all to Darwinism. Certainly doesn't owe much. And on the contrary, Darwinism hindered, I believe, the development of modern genetics. And where might we be if that had not happened? So the question is that there's Wycliffe's Bible there. Wycliffe was the person who first translated the Bible into English in the 14th century. We've had the Bible in English that many hundreds of years. So is it the influence of the Bible that has led to modern genetics, or is it the influence of Darwinism? That's the question that we're going to look at. I want to take you along a creationist trajectory, a path. I mean, obviously this is very sweeping and in a sense simplistic. As we know, at any one time there are many people working in any particular field, and I'm just going to select 3 people, one from each century, but they are key people. As you will see, they are very, very significant people. So let's quote Steve Fuller again. I quote him wherever I can, even if I think I can say it better actually, because he's a bit long-winded sometimes. But I want to, rather than paraphrase him, which I could have done, I hope you don't mind, I'm actually going to quote him directly. I think it's important I do, so that you know this is not just coming from me, because obviously I am a creationist myself, and he is not. But he says, what is now called Mendelian genetics was contributed by people who held the counter-Darwinian assumption that every member of a species, regardless of its generational history, is programmed with a reproductive propensity. That assumption is a legacy of special creationism, a research tradition in natural history that connects the devout Linnaeus and Mendel. That's from his book from last year, Science versus Religion, Intelligent Design and the Problem of Evolution. So he is saying, in a rather convoluted sentence there, what I've been saying to you, that genetics actually is a legacy of special creationism. Now, some people even try to deny the Christian roots of science, but most people do know that most early scientists, certainly most key early scientists, were Christians. But they tend to take the line that if they lived today, they wouldn't be. Now, if they say that, they really do not understand what was going on. And in this year, when we have got coming up Darwin's 200th birthday in February, and in exactly a year's time, November next year, will be the 150 years since Origin of Species was published. We're focused on history, and while we're at it, we ought to really grasp this, what it means that modern science has Christian roots. Because it isn't simply that they happen to be Christians, now we're all enlightened Darwinists, and if Isaac Newton and co means very many people, if they were alive today, they would not be creationists. It's absolute, well, words fail me. It just shows that people have not grasped what it means that science has Christian roots. They did their science because they were Christians. It followed directly from their Christian beliefs. And Steve fully recognizes this and knows it. So, in fact, many of the most significant scientists have been Christian theists, not naturalists. People like Maynard Smith himself and Richard Dawkins, and many of modern scientists are naturalists, or materialists would be another word to use for it, in that they only recognize the material, the natural world, nothing supernatural. It's a kind of elimination of the supernatural. So that the claim that science is rightly confined just to the natural and you don't include the supernatural anywhere. So that's naturalism, but that is actually not what gave rise to modern science. That is not what many of the most successful and significant scientists have believed. Isaac Newton would be one of them, of course. But the foundational influence of creationist thought can be seen in this trajectory I'm going to introduce you to now, but I want you to know that it doesn't just apply to genetics. It applies to virtually every branch of science. That key discoveries have been made not just by Christians, but by Christians who were soaked in the Bible and who had strongly creationist beliefs. So the current situation where creationists are ridiculed and told that they're ruining science, that they're ruining children by teaching them this, is just a travesty of the truth. Otherwise you're going to say that Isaac Newton couldn't have done his science. But let's think of our biologists. The trajectory I'm talking about now involved three key biologists working in 3 different centuries. There was John Ray, who is known as the father of natural history. There's Carl Linnaeus. I'm choosing to, he did his name several different ways. I'm choosing to do it that way. He was in the 18th century, the father of modern taxonomy. And there was Gregor Mendel, the father of modern genetics, in the 19th century. Now, these are not random, unconnected people. They are people who were working in a research tradition, as Steve Fuller has pointed out. He mentioned Linnaeus and Mendel. He could have mentioned Ray as well, as I'm going to show you.